I shouldn't be here.
But you are. And you want this as much as I do.
Why did one tiny tech detail hit harder than all my lies and break my whole marriage in a single afternoon? What happens when a husband who looks weak and boring lets you mock him for months, then quietly walks into a lobby with a folder and a process server? How was I supposed to know that sleeping with 3 of his friends would be nothing compared to what those synced messages would do? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Ardith Larke, and I know people are going to judge me before they even hear the full story. They always do. They see one headline, one detail, and they think they understand my whole life. They do not see the slow years. They do not see how boring and small a person can make you feel, just by not showing up. At least, that is how it felt with Nate. That afternoon, he came home late again. His work bag was over his shoulder, boots dirty from some job site. He walked in, looked around the living room, and asked if I had started dinner. I said we had a barbecue at Logan's place, and he looked surprised, like I had not told him 3 times already. I said he never listens. He said he was tired. That was always his word. Tired. I watched him put his boots by the door in a neat line, like always. I told him we needed to be fun tonight because people had not seen us out together for a while. I told him he should try to act like he liked me. He gave a little laugh and said, "Of course he liked me." And I rolled my eyes and said liking was not enough, that I wanted him to actually be present. He went quiet after that. I was already dressed, tight jeans and a top that showed just enough. I had done my hair and makeup while Caleb watched a cartoon. Nate looked at me and said I looked nice. I said he sounded surprised. He said he did not mean it that way. I told him it was fine, that I was used to getting more real compliments from other people. That one hit. I could see it in his face, and part of me enjoyed that. It was easy to make him feel small. On the way over, he drove in silence. I scrolled my phone and sent Mara a picture of my outfit. She replied that I looked too hot for a married woman, with a winking emoji. I told her Nate needed a reminder that other men would want me. She replied that he should be grateful. Logan's backyard was full when we arrived. Grill smoke, music, people laughing. Nate's friends were already there. Logan in a faded t-shirt, Marco in his gym tank, Ty with a beer in hand, loud as always. They called out to Nate, but their eyes moved over to me and stayed there a second too long. I liked that. Elaine and Martin, my in-laws, sat on the patio, talking softly. Elaine gave us a warm smile. Martin just nodded. Caleb ran off to the kiddie pool with some neighbor kids. Nate stayed close to the grill at first, talking to Logan about work. I moved between groups, drink in hand. I told a small circle of people that Nate had been gone so much that Caleb called the UPS man Daddy by mistake once. People laughed. I saw Nate's shoulders stiffen from across the yard. He looked over at me. I lifted my cup as if that made it a joke and not a cut. Logan came over with another drink and asked if I was behaving. I said someone in this marriage had to bring energy, since Nate was basically a walking lunchbox. Logan winced a little, but Marco thought it was hilarious. He shouted the line louder so everyone could hear. People laughed again. I told myself that if Nate really loved me, he would laugh too. When he did not, I decided that meant he had no sense of humor. When he came by to ask if I was okay, I told him he was killing the mood. I said people were finally seeing that I was fun, and he was hovering like a babysitter. He said he just wanted to check in. I said he should go back to his true love, the grill, and turn back to my friends. Later, when he went to sit next to his mom, I told Mara in a low voice that he always ran to his mother when I hurt his feelings. She said he sounded like a child. At one point, Caleb ran over and climbed into Nate's lap. I watched Nate wrap his arms around our son. It was a sweet picture, but I pushed it away. I told myself that hugs did not cancel out months of him being on the road. When Caleb asked if Daddy had to leave again soon, Nate said yes, just for a while. After Caleb ran off again, I went over and told Nate he should not say things like that in front of everyone, because it made me look like the bad guy who kept the home together alone. He stared at me like he could not believe what I was saying. Elaine asked if everything was all right. I jumped in before Nate could answer and said he was just stressed and liked to take it out on me. He shook his head and said that was not true. I told her he did not see how his work made us feel abandoned. He looked stunned, and Elaine frowned in confusion. I knew what I was doing. If she heard problems, I wanted her to think they were his fault. As the sky got darker, some people started leaving. Nate said he had to get up early for his next trip and asked if we could head home. I complained that he never wanted to stay out late with me, that he always left first. Logan glanced between us and changed the subject, saying Nate had a big project. I joked that Nate loved his wires and panels more than us. More laughter. Nate did not laugh. On the drive home, he said it hurt when I talked about him like that. I said he was being dramatic. I reminded him that comics roast their partners on stage all the time. I said if he could not take a little joke, maybe he should think about why it bothered him so much. He went quiet. He always went quiet. I told myself it meant he had nothing to say, not that he was trying not to fight in front of our kid. We came inside and put Caleb to bed. Nate read a short story, voice soft. I watched from the doorway and felt nothing special. It was just something he was supposed to do. When Caleb asked if Daddy was leaving forever, Nate said he would always come back. After he kissed our son, he stepped out into the hallway. I told him Caleb would not ask that if he were around more. He said he was working, so we could live in this house. I said plenty of men worked and still made their wives feel wanted. He opened his phone then, probably to check his schedule. The screen lit his face. For a second, I saw a small pop-up at the top, a reminder for the next week, personal, downtown 3:15 p.m. I made a face and asked if he was planning something fun without me. He said it was nothing, just something he needed to take care of. I said he was secretive now too. He started to explain, then stopped, and said he did not want to argue. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and told myself again that he was lucky I was still here. Most women would have left by now, I thought. Most women would not stay with a man who made them feel this invisible. That night, while he packed his work bag at the dining table, I sat scrolling my phone, ignoring him. I watched my own reflection in the dark window, hair still perfect from the party, lips still colored. I thought how strange it was that I could look this good and still feel so unseen in my own house. The next morning, Nate left before the sun came up. I heard him moving around in the dark, zipping his work bag, trying not to wake me. He put a hand on my shoulder and said he would be gone for a week, maybe more. I made a sleepy sound and turned away. I did not want to give him that soft moment. He kissed the air near my hair and left. When the door shut, I opened my eyes right away. The house felt different without him. It felt lighter. I lay there for a while, scrolling my phone. Mara had sent me photos from the barbecue, all of us laughing. In one, I was leaning close to Logan while Nate stood in the background at the grill. I zoomed in on my own face, on my smile. I thought I looked more alive next to Logan than next to my own husband. Caleb padded into the room a little later, rubbing his eyes. He asked where Daddy was. I told him Daddy had to work, like always. He asked if Daddy would be home for the weekend. I said I did not know, then added that we did not wait on other people's plans. He looked confused and hugged me. I hugged him back, but my mind was already on the group chat. In the kitchen, I made cereal for Caleb and coffee for myself. As I poured, my phone buzzed. It was Marco, in the group chat with Logan and Ty. He said they were thinking of hitting the downtown sports bar on Friday, asked if I wanted to come out. Ty added a comment about how I had been the life of the last party. Logan sent a simple thumbs up, nothing more. I stared at the messages for a second. A small part of me thought it would look bad, going out with my husband's friends when he was gone. But another part answered right away. I told myself it was just drinks, just keeping up appearances. I wrote back that I might come if I could find a sitter. Ty said they would not accept no as an answer. Marco added a joking line about Nate being lucky that his friends were willing to babysit his wife while he was away. I laughed at the screen and did not correct him. That afternoon, Mara came over to watch Caleb for a bit. I told her about the invite. She raised her eyebrows and said she knew this was coming. She said men like Nate assumed their wives would just sit at home knitting while they traveled around. I said exactly, and that someone like me needed more. I asked if she thought it was wrong. She said it was only wrong if I was stupid enough to get caught. I told her I was not stupid. When Friday came, I dressed slower than I needed to. I chose a short black dress and a jacket that I could take off later. I spent extra time on my eyeliner. I told Caleb I was going out with friends from work. He asked if Daddy would be there. I said he was far away, and that Daddy knew I could not sit inside all the time. It sounded reasonable in my own ears. Mara came over with a pizza and a children's movie. She said she would put Caleb to bed and stay the night. As I grabbed my purse, she looked me up and down and said Nate was a fool if he let me walk out like that alone. I said he had not let me. He just was not here. She laughed and told me to have fun. The downtown sports bar was loud and busy, full of screens and neon lights. Marco waved me over from a high table by the back wall. Ty shouted my name and spread his arms like I was a celebrity. Logan gave a small smile and asked if I had trouble getting out. I said I could do what I wanted, and that my husband trusted me. The way I said trusted made them all grin. We ordered food and rounds of drinks. Marco leaned in and asked if Nate knew I was with them. I said sure, he knew I had a social life, that I was not a prisoner. That was not true. Nate only knew I was out with friends. When my phone buzzed with his name, I let it sit on the table face down. Ty noticed and asked if I was going to answer. I said he could wait. He always made me wait when I needed something. They nodded like they understood. Later, I finally opened Nate's message. He had sent a photo of his hotel room, neat and plain, and said he was going to bed early, asked how my night was and how Caleb was doing. I told him everything was fine and that I was already home, tired. I typed that from my bar stool, with music shaking the floor. He sent back a heart and told me to sleep well. I put my phone back down and felt a strange power rush through me. It was so easy. The night blurred together. At one point, Logan said maybe they should call it and head home. Marco and Ty teased him, said he was acting like Nate. I said nothing wrong would happen if we kept drinking. We were adults. I suggested we move to somewhere quieter near the airport, a hotel bar where no one from our neighborhood went. They looked at each other. Logan shook his head, but Marco said it sounded fun. We ended up at a hotel near the highway, the kind with a lobby bar and late check-in noise. We sat in a booth in the corner. Ty went outside to smoke, Marco went to the bathroom, and for a minute it was just me and Logan. He looked down at his hands and said, "This felt wrong." He said Nate trusted him. I said Nate trusted everyone more than he trusted me. I said maybe it was time someone chose me for once. He said we were drunk and that I would regret it. I told him I knew exactly what I was doing. I told him if Nate cared, he would be here, not miles away in some boring room. I told myself I meant it. I do not need to go into every detail of what happened after that. It is enough to say I followed Logan up to his room just to talk. It is enough to say we both knew we were crossing a line. It is enough to say I did not stop it, even when I had the chance. In my head, I kept saying it was one time. That one time did not define a whole marriage. Later, when I finally ordered a ride home, it was late. The sky was black, the roads almost empty. In the back seat, I opened my messages to Nate. I sent him a quick note that I had turned in early and that Caleb was fine. I said I loved him. I told myself that message balanced things out. On the ride, I went through my gallery and deleted the few photos from the night that showed us together too close. It felt like cleaning. When I walked into the living room, the house was quiet. Mara was asleep on the couch. Caleb's small shoes were in a messy pile by the door. On the bookshelf, Nate's old iPad sat plugged in, dark. I glanced at it and thought about how long it had been since he used it. To me, it was just another dead device. One more outdated thing he never cleared away. As I slid off my shoes and tiptoed past, the iPad screen suddenly lit for a second. A message preview popped up at the top. My own name, my own words to Nate, mirrored there. I paused, then shrugged it off. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself all the important things were still under my control. The second time did not even feel like a choice. It felt like something that was already decided, like a show with new episodes coming out each week. I just had to press play. After that night with Logan, the group chat got louder. Marco and Ty sent more jokes, more memes. They sent a picture of 3 beer bottles lined up and tagged our initials under them, like we were a set. Logan stayed quiet at first. He sent short answers, nothing more. That annoyed me. I had risked more than he had, and he was the one acting strange. One evening, Nate called while I was doing dishes. He said work was rough, and he was counting the days until he could come home. I said I was busy and asked if we could talk later. He asked if Caleb could say goodnight. I put him on speaker and handed the phone to our son. While they talked, my other phone, my personal one, buzzed with the group chat. Ty was asking if I was free this weekend. Marco added a comment about round 2. The timing made me smile in a dark way. After Caleb hung up, Nate asked if everything was okay. I said yes, that we were fine, just tired. He asked if I had gone out again. I lied easily and said no, that I'd been home all week, that I barely saw people. He said he worried about me being lonely. I said he didn't need to worry. I could handle myself. Then I hung up and opened the group chat again. Marco suggested a small get-together at his apartment on Saturday. Just the crew, he wrote. He sent a picture of his living room, tidy, with an open pizza box on the table. Ty said he would bring drinks. Logan did not reply for a few hours. When he finally did, he wrote that maybe it was not a good idea and that he had plans. Marco dropped a laughing emoji and wrote that he would drag him over if he had to. I stared at the screen. Part of me felt insulted that Logan wanted to avoid me. I told myself he was being overdramatic, that adults could do things and move on. I wrote that I was going, and that if he wanted to act weird, that was on him. Ty replied with fire emojis. Marco wrote that he knew I was the brave one. On Saturday, I dressed with a kind of irritated care. I put on leggings and a loose shirt, something that looked casual but still showed my shape. I added lipstick but told myself it was just in case. We went out afterward. Caleb was at my mother's for the evening. Joan had picked him up, happy to have him overnight. She asked if I had plans. I said I was meeting some friends. She said to enjoy myself. She always said that. She never asked many questions. I drove to Marco's apartment complex just before sunset. The parking lot was full of cars, but I found a space near the back. As I walked up the stairs, I could hear loud music and laughter from his unit. Marco opened the door with a big grin and pulled me into a quick hug. He said I looked dangerous tonight. I laughed and asked where everyone was. Ty was on the couch, feet up, a drink in his hand, watching a game on the TV. He whistled when he saw me and said Nate was going to start tracking my location if I kept showing up like this. I said Nate already knew I had a life and that he was not my father. It felt good saying that out loud. It made me feel older and sharper, not like some scared wife. Logan sat at the table, half turned away. He gave a small nod and said hi. I walked over and told him he was being weird. He said he was tired. I said everyone was tired, but they still showed up. He looked like he wanted to say more but closed his mouth. We played a card game for a while, drank, and watched the game. Marco kept making jokes about Nate, little digs about how he was probably asleep in some sad motel while we had real fun. Ty made a comment about how loyal Nate was, always trusting, always believing the best. The way he said loyal almost sounded like stupid. I did not argue. At some point, Ty started scrolling his phone and laughing. He turned the screen toward me. It was the group chat. He had renamed it with a stupid title about Nate's Girl Squad. My name was there, right next to the others. My messages popped up in the screenshot. All the times I had complained about Nate, all the jokes about his long hours, his clothes, his habits. I saw the message I sent after the first night with Logan, the one where I said Nate would never have the nerve to ask where I really was. Ty said we should take a shot every time I roasted my husband. Marco thought that was hilarious. Logan did not. He said it was too much. He said this was not a game. The mood dipped for a second. I felt anger rise. I told Logan that if he was going to act guilty, maybe he should not have done anything in the first place. I said he knew exactly what he was doing that night and that no one forced him. He said I knew Nate longer, that the responsibility was not the same. I told him if he was going to start pointing fingers, I would tell Nate that he had pressured me, that he had taken advantage. The room went quiet. My own words surprised me a little, but I did not take them back. Ty looked between us and raised his hands like it was none of his business. Marco turned the music up a little. Logan's jaw clenched. He said I would not do that. I said he did not know what I would do if someone tried to ruin my life. That was enough. After that, he kept his mouth shut. Later, as the night went on, the drinks and jokes grew bigger again. Ty insisted on taking selfies, angles where I was in the middle, the three of them crowded around me. He posted one to his story, tagging us all, with a caption about saving the lonely wife. I laughed and told him to take it down. He deleted it, or at least he said he did. I did not ask to see. At one point, we ran out of mixers, and Marco said we should walk to the corner store. I stayed behind with Ty while Logan went with him. Ty leaned back on the couch, looked at me slowly, and asked if I always made rooms feel like this. I asked what he meant. He said like the air was heavy and electric. I said maybe that was his own guilt. He laughed and said he was not the one who was married. What happened next with Ty and later, another time with Marco, followed the same pattern as with Logan. It started with small choices that could have gone another way. A hand on my knee that I did not move. A joke about loyalty that I did not correct. A kiss I pretended to be surprised by, then leaned into. I told myself it was still just attention, that my real life with Nate was separate, untouched. Each time, afterward, I cleaned my phone like it was a crime scene. I deleted photos, cleared call logs, swiped away messages. I watched the little bar that said deleted on my screen and felt safe. I believed that if I erased the signs, the acts themselves lost weight. What I forgot was that not everything lived only on my phone. On Sunday, during brunch at home, Caleb asked why Uncle Logan was not coming by anymore. I felt my fork pause halfway to my mouth. I smiled and said Logan was busy. I added that grown-ups sometimes drift apart. Nate looked at me across the table for a long second, eyes unreadable. Elaine sat at the end of the table, listening. Mara, who had joined us, repeated one of my jokes about Nate needing his friends to drag him out of the house. She made it sound like a punchline, like it was no big deal. Mara pulled out her phone and showed me a clip from the night before. One of Ty's stories before he deleted it. It was just a second-long video, me laughing on Marco's couch, 3 male shapes around me, music loud. My face tilted toward the camera, smiling. My ring caught the light for a moment. She giggled and said the caption had been wild. She said she had told him to delete it in case Nate saw, but she had saved it first because she thought I would want it. I laughed along, but my chest felt tight. I looked over at Nate again. He was wiping Caleb's face with a napkin, focused, calm. He did not say anything about the video. Maybe he had not seen it yet. Maybe he had seen everything. That afternoon, while Nate was at the hardware store with his dad, I walked past the living room shelf. The old iPad sat there, screen black. For some reason, I picked it up and pressed the home button. The screen burst to life. A list of message previews filled the left side. My name, my words, all lined up with little timestamps. The last one was from the night before. My complaint about Nate being boring. My brag about trying all three while he was away. For a long second, I just stared. Then I set the iPad back down, face down this time, as if that fixed anything. I told myself he probably did not know the password anymore. I told myself he never touched this device. I told myself I had time. I kept telling myself that, even as a cold feeling slid down my spine and stayed there. On Monday, I decided I needed to get ahead of things. That was the phrase that kept running in my mind, get ahead of it. It made me feel like I was in control, like this was some work problem I could manage with the right story. At the dental clinic, the morning was busy. Phones ringing, patients signing in, kids playing with the toy train in the corner. I sat at the front desk, smiling on cue, clicking through appointments. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt a little jump in my chest. During a slow moment, one of the hygienists, Carrie, leaned on the counter and said she had seen a funny video on Ty's page the other day. She said she had not known I was so close with Nate's friends. I laughed lightly and said it was nothing, just stupid boy humor. She said the caption had been pretty wild. I shrugged and said people on the internet always exaggerated. She gave me a strange look and asked if Nate was okay with all that. I rolled my eyes and said Nate trusted me too much sometimes, that he worried for no reason. I told her he liked to act jealous, but he never did anything about it. I made it sound like he was the one being childish. She said that if she were married, she would not like those videos. I told her not to be judgmental. I added that she did not understand what it was like to have a husband who worked away and barely touched you. Her cheeks flushed and she backed off, returning to her room. In the break room at lunch, a couple of assistants were talking about relationships. One said her husband made her share locations on their phones. I jumped in and said that was toxic, that controlling men were the worst. I said Nate never did that because he knew I was not some teenager. Then I added that even if he tried, I would not allow it. I wanted them to picture me as the one with standards, the one who would not accept being controlled. It did not matter that none of that was actually happening. Later that morning, Nate called during a lull. I went into the supply closet to answer. He asked how my day was. I said it was fine, busy as always. He asked if anything strange had happened over the weekend. I laughed and asked what that was supposed to mean. He said he had seen some notifications and wanted to check in. I acted offended and asked if he was spying on me now. He said he was just asking a question. I told him if he did not trust me, that was his problem, not mine. He went quiet for a second, then said he did not want to fight while he was at work. I said then maybe he should stop starting fights. In my mind, that counted as a win. After work, I met Mara at the strip mall coffee shop near my place. It was busy, full of people on laptops and mums with strollers. We took a table by the window. She put her drink down and asked straight out how things were with Nate. I told her he was acting paranoid, that he was trying to paint me as unfaithful. I made my voice soft and hurt. She asked if he had proof. I said of course not, that men never had real proof, just feelings. I told her he was twisting things, making big deals out of harmless fun. I reminded her how he always rolled his eyes at my outfits, how he hated when I went out. She nodded along, even though half of that was not really true. I told her I needed her, if anyone ever asked, to say I had been with her on certain nights. I listed them out: casual, like we were planning movie dates. She shifted in her seat and said that sounded serious. I said it was just in case he tried to drag other people into his drama. I said she would be protecting me, protecting us. She said she did not want to end up in the middle of some big mess. I laughed and said there would be no big mess if she just stuck to the story. I told her no one would ever check anything deeply. People just believed what sounded sadder. She still looked uneasy, but she agreed. That evening, Nate's parents invited us to dinner at a family restaurant. One of those places with big booths and loud kids, and baskets of bread on every table. Caleb sat between Nate and me, swinging his legs. Elaine and Martin sat across from us, menus open but eyes mostly on us. Elaine asked Nate when his current job would end. He said he was probably going to be home more soon. I jumped in and said I would believe that when I saw it. I added that Caleb and I had learned not to count on his promises. Nate stared at his napkin. Elaine looked at me with surprise and asked if things had been that hard. That was my opening. I took a breath and let my voice wobble a bit. I said Nate did not understand how lonely it was, that he barely called, that he acted like he needed to approve my social life. I said he got angry when I went out with friends, that he checked my phone and asked too many questions. None of that was completely true, but I said it like it was, and I watched it land. Nate said quietly that he did not track my phone, that he had never taken it from me. I said he did not have to. He made me feel watched all the time. I said his questions felt like accusations. Elaine looked between us, confused. Martin's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I told them I was just trying to keep some joy in my life. I said, if I stayed home every night waiting for him, I would go crazy. I said my friends were good to me, that they made me feel seen. I made sure to put extra weight on the word seen. Joan had joined us too, sliding in at the end of the booth late. When she heard me talk about the traveling and the questions, she rolled her eyes and said, men who are never home should be grateful their wives do not leave. She said if Nate was worried, maybe he should look at his own choices first. I smirked and sipped my drink. It felt nice to have someone on my side in front of his parents. Nate tried to say something about money and bills, about how he worked long hours to cover them. I interrupted and said he loved his job more than us. I said he chose overtime over family. It did not matter that we had agreed on those hours together. What mattered now was how it sounded. To anyone listening at nearby tables, he was the cold husband, I was the tired wife. That was the picture I wanted. Caleb tugged my sleeve and asked if Daddy was in trouble. I laughed it off and said Daddy was just sensitive. But in my mind, I liked the idea. Nate, in trouble. Nate questioned. For once, not me. When the bill came, Nate reached for it out of habit. I stopped him and said I would put it on our joint card. I wanted to show I was a partner, that I could handle things. The server ran the card and left the slip. When I checked the receipt, I saw a note at the bottom, a small line. Available balance, £1,242.37. My brows pulled together. That number felt wrong. I knew we had more saved. At home later, after we put Caleb to bed, I opened the banking app on my phone. There it was. Our main savings account nearly emptied. Money moved into 2 new accounts with only Nate's name. One was labelled with his work company name. The other had a bland label, Household Archive A. Archive. The word made my stomach clench. There were notes in the transaction history too, little comments like, rent, utilities, Caleb. It looked careful, planned, not like a rash grab. I stormed into the living room where Nate was sitting with his laptop. I told him I had seen the accounts, that he was hiding money. He said calmly that he was not hiding it, he was organizing it. He said he was making sure bills were covered and that certain things were protected. I said he was stealing from me. He said we would talk about it properly when the time was right. I told him if he thought he could just move things around and then accuse me of stuff, he was insane. I said no judge would take his side if he tried to make me look bad. He did not yell back. He just closed his laptop slowly and said again that we would handle it properly. That word again. Properly. It sounded so boring, so harmless. I told myself he was bluffing, that this was some sad attempt to scare me. I went to bed angry but still sure of myself. In my mind, I was already planning the next part of my story, the one where everyone would see how cruel he was to the woman who did everything. The days after that were strange. It felt like the air in the house had changed, like someone had turned down the volume on everything Nate did. He still went through the motions, but there was something closed off in him now. I noticed it, but I told myself it was just guilt. His guilt, not mine. He started coming home earlier, which you would think I would like, but it did not feel like a gift. It felt like he was watching. He would pick up Caleb from daycare, cook simple dinners, load the dishwasher without being asked. On paper, it looked perfect. Inside, it annoyed me. I thought, now he decides to act like a real husband. Now, when I have found my own fun. At night, he often slept in the guest room. The first time he did it, he said he did not want to wake me with his snoring. I said he had never cared before. He said things were tense, and maybe some space would help. I told him he was punishing me, making me feel like the bad guy. He said quietly that he was just giving us some quiet to think. I did not want quiet. Quiet left room for guilt. I wanted noise, drama, anything that made me the center again. One evening, I brought it up in the kitchen while he was putting leftovers into containers. I asked if he was cheating on me. I said it like a joke, but with a sharp edge. He paused, spoon in midair, and asked why I'd say that. I said, men who suddenly change routines are almost always hiding something. I pointed out the new accounts, the nights in the guest room, the closed laptop. I said if anyone was acting suspicious, it was him. He just looked at me for a long moment. Then he said that, if I was so sure about that, maybe I should check my own reflection. I laughed and asked what that was supposed to mean. He said nothing, just put the lid on the container and slid it into the fridge. He had started keeping his phone closer. Before, he would leave it on the counter all the time. Now, it was in his pocket, face down when he set it aside. I told myself that was proof he was up to something. I told him he was being secretive. He said he was allowed some privacy. I said married people did not hide their screens. The irony never hit me, not then. One Saturday, I suggested we go out with friends to reset. I said maybe a double date, maybe a game night. He said he did not feel up to pretending everything was normal. That word, pretending, made my skin prickle. I told him I was tired of him acting like there was some huge problem. I said we were fine. I said all couples got a bit distant sometimes, and that he was turning ordinary marriage stuff into some drama. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, and asked if I really thought what was happening was ordinary marriage stuff. I told him yes, that we were just going through a rough patch. I said if he kept digging for problems, he would create them. He gave a humorless little laugh and said some problems did not need digging. They were sitting on shelves in plain sight. My eyes flicked to the bookcase where the old iPad sat, and then quickly away. A day later, I went to the bank to ask about the accounts. I took Caleb with me because my mother had plans. The teller smiled politely and looked up our profile. I asked, in a careful voice, why I was not listed on one of the new accounts. She said it was an individual account under Nathan's name, and that she could not give me details beyond what I saw. She said the bills were still set to auto-pay from the joint account, that nothing looked past due. I said my husband must have made a mistake, that we always did things together. She gave me that look, the one people give when they are trying not to get involved. She said sometimes people set up separate accounts for business or legal reasons. Legal reasons. Those words stayed with me all the way home. That night, I confronted him again. I waited until Caleb was in bed, and then followed Nate into the guest room. He was folding laundry, calm, like always. I asked if he was planning to leave me, I said if he was, he should at least have the courage to say it to my face. He put down the shirt in his hands and looked at me. He asked why I thought the marriage was stable. I blinked. He asked if I really believed we were just in a normal dip. I said yes, that all couples had ups and downs. I said he was rewriting history, acting like everything was my fault. I felt my voice rise. I told him he was damaging his own image, making himself look cruel, and that my family already thought he was overreacting. He sat on the edge of the bed and let me go on. When I finally ran out of words, he spoke quietly. He said he had seen the messages. He said he had heard the voice notes. He said he knew the dates, the places, the names. He did not yell. He did not insult me. He just listed them, one by one. Logan, Marco, Ty. For a second, my vision went white. Then I recovered. I told him he was misunderstanding. I said those messages were jokes. I said they were out of context. I told him he was spying on me by looking at devices I didn't remember were still logged in. I said he had broken my trust. He looked almost sad at that. He said I was twisting it like always. He said he did not need to misinterpret anything. My words were clear. I said if he told anyone about this, I would say he was controlling, that he was making up stories because he could not handle me having friends. I reminded him of what I had already told his parents, my coworkers, my own family. I said people already knew he had a temper, that he was strict and jealous. It was not exactly true, but it sounded close enough. He stared at the floor and rubbed his forehead. Then he said he was done arguing. He said there was no point. He said some things would be decided outside this house now. That scared me more than shouting would have. A few days later, I saw him downtown by chance. I had taken a late lunch from the clinic and was walking past office buildings to meet Mara for coffee. Nate was coming out of one of them. Tall glass front, big silver letters on the wall. He was holding a thin folder. Logan was with him, looking tense. They shook hands with a man in a suit at the door. It did not take a genius to guess what type of office it was. I ducked into a doorway for a second, heart pounding. Then I forced myself to walk out and call his name. He turned, saw me, and his face went very still. Logan gave me a weak nod and slipped away. The man in the suit went back inside. I walked up and asked what he was doing there. I asked if he was trying to ruin everything. I said going behind my back to talk to strangers about our marriage was betrayal. He said calmly that he was getting information. He said he wanted to know his options. I scoffed and said no serious person would see me as the problem once they heard how often he was gone, how he had emotionally abandoned me. I told him judges and lawyers and whoever else loved a sad wife story. He just looked at me, eyes tired. He said he had more than stories. He said he had records, dates, logs. He said I should be careful about assuming what other people would think when they saw all of it together. I told him records could be faked and that men lied. He said he was not going to argue on the sidewalk. That night at home, I tried one more angle. I went to his room with tears already in my eyes. I sat down beside him and said we could fix this if he would just stop digging. I said I had made mistakes, but that our vows meant something. I reminded him of our wedding day, of Caleb's birth, all the soft things. I said he would destroy our family over some flirty texts and a few bad nights if he kept going like this. He listened silently. When I reached for his hand, he did not pull away, but he did not hold on either. When I finished, he took a breath and said he was not the one destroying anything. He said I had made my choices over and over again. He said his responsibility now was to our son and to making sure things were clear and safe. I asked what that meant. My voice shook, but I tried to make it sound like anger, not fear. He looked at me steadily and said he was going to handle everything through the proper channels. He said there would be no more shouting, no chaos, no rumors, only facts and forms and decisions. I told him he was being dramatic, that he was scaring me for no reason. I said he would calm down in a week. He shook his head once. Then he said, in that same quiet voice, that it was out of the up and down stage now. He said things would be handled properly. The way he said the word this time made my stomach twist, even though I still told myself he was bluffing. I was crossing the lobby with my coworkers, planning to complain about Nate, when a man in a blazer stepped in front of me and asked my name. I said yes, annoyed. He handed me an envelope and said it was a petition for divorce with temporary custody orders. My coworkers froze. Behind him, Nate stood with a lawyer and Logan, all calm, like this was a meeting. The papers listed dates, hotels, even my own voice notes, pulled from the stupid iPad I'd forgotten. One tiny sync setting, and suddenly the house, the accounts, even Caleb's schedule were his, not mine.